streaming in here on Birds 365. McMullen, McDonald, Mac and Mac talking to our guy, the co-host of the Eagles pregame show on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, which, oh, by the way, as rumor has it that Joe Kraus actually picked up his tab to come down the Atlantic City Expressway. I'm not believing that. I think Missinelli goes into his own pocket for that. He's dying to get back down the shore to Oceans to host this year for us on the Eagles postgame show. Mikey Mitz, how's your summer been?
Who told you that Kraus is picking up the tab for us to get down there?
A little bird just told me that. I didn't believe it.
Yeah. That's unknown to me, Jody. And my Easy Pass tab will tell you.
yeah, those Easy Pass, man, they rack up, man. Woo.
Well, how you doing,
every 2 days, I'm looking at my
Can you please start the season? I can't take this delay between the last preseason game and the regular season. It's
really awful, Mike. It's awful.
Yeah, it's hard to process.
It's tough to get through this preseason. But I want to talk about your preseason. How ready are you for Seth talking about Sean Desai and this defense? Because I mean, number two wasn't good enough. So
he's the one more optimistic. I had him on my podcast last week. First of all, he's lost like 30 pounds, and I don't know how he did it because he spent 3 weeks in Italy eating pasta. He actually lost weight. He looks fantastic. He looks like he's calmer this year and in better shape and ready to go. And yeah, he is anticipating that Desai will do a few things differently.
All right.
Is differently better? That's the question. Different is nice, but does different equate to better? And we won't see. John and I have been debating this back and forth. We were just talking about the fact that Desai seems to be more open-minded. That Gannon had his system, he was sticking to it, and that heck or high water, it was going to be the way he was going to do things. Do you think that is the case, that Sean Desai will be more open-minded? Will the head coach let him be more open-minded?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Jody. I think he will be. Just looking at him on the sidelines, he looks like a guy, if something's not working, he's going to switch it. So that's what I like. And I think he's going to be a little more aggressive than Gannon, and we'll see how that works. And if it doesn't work, we'll go back to start. I think Sirianni's going to trust them, at least early, and see what unfolds here. Listen, they're a good team. There's no two ways around it. They're going to be a very good team, very formidable team. So the defense, to me, is the whole key. Whether that can adjust early on, because I think they're going to be explosive offensively. I think the size job is a lot harder than Brian Johnson's job. But yeah, I think he's a little more adaptable. I could just see that in his personality.
Nick pretty much has one rule for his defensive coordinator, as far as I can tell, Mike, and that's limit explosive plays. Does that limit the defensive coordinator? I mean, does that one rule?
Yeah, to an extent. But again, if he sees the other side of it, John, like if he sees a little aggression really helping him, I think he'll defer to it. I think that he's programmed to think that explosive plays defeat you. But if you can get a little more aggressive and not see it in explosive play, you start to begin to trust that a little more. So that's what I think will happen. I don't think he's going to go overboard aggressive, but I think you're going to see some more blitzing in certain spots than Gannon did to test it. And obviously, if they get burned, they'll adapt to that. But I like the new approach. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, one of the things
they're a better roster. I think their rotation is pretty deep. I think you could do a lot of things with this defense.
One of the things I'm going to be tremendously interested in this year, and it all goes to the comparison of the two defense coordinators, is Nakobe Dean. Because Dean was pretty good at blitzing when he was at Georgia. He could come off the edge and be that one step behind and get to the quarterback, closing the gap quickly. But they don't blitz linebackers. They didn't blitz linebackers at all in the last 2 years with Cannon running in his defense. If the kid's got a strength, would you just put it on a shelf and not use it? Or they give him a chance to do that?
Maybe they don't want to show it. It's possible that when the season starts, they'll let him loose a little bit, and they just didn't want to. He didn't have a lot of playing time, so. Linebacker is the $1 million question for them. Are they good enough at linebacker? And I don't know if we know that. And they only have 3 on the roster right now. I'm surprised that they haven't added another one. Maybe they will. But when you're talking about Christian Ellis and Zach Cunningham, that wasn't really the plan going in. Like those guys had to kind of survive that roster, and Morrow was the one that was gone. Listen, I value linebackers more than they do. I know Seth.
I think everybody does.
Yeah, I think everybody does. So, I mean, who's to say that they don't have it right? I mean, we'll find out. But that's a major question. Even Dean is a question. He's the one who's the surviving starter, and everybody's relying on. But we'll see. If you look at the Eagles, they're good at every position. You get to the linebacker, and you go, we'll see. But again, they don't value it. So maybe they're right. We're wrong.
Well, and by the way, I think I agree with their devaluation of the position. I just think they've taken it too far. I think they've gone too far. So I think there's a middle road there where you could say, all right, yeah, you should devalue this position in the modern game. But you shouldn't devalue it to the point that they have, as you mentioned, not only with unproven commodities, the most proven commodity is Zach Cunningham. Let's be honest. He's been a good NFL player. But to devalue it to the degree they have and to assume, you said something interesting to me because I've heard it from other people as well. This is, I think Jeff McClain said it, the best roster in Howie Roseman's sort of a GM-ship or de facto GM run. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, last year was pretty stinking good, and especially when you look at the defensive side, there's a couple offenses with Miles and Isaac who are very good players, not starting superstars, but good players. Defensively, they lost some good players, and starting a linebacker, say what you want, but they lost two good linebackers who played 20 games. One who was really good. Yeah. They lose two safeties, one who was a playmaker, and they lose a Pro Bowl defensive tackle. And I love Carter. Jody can tell you that, but I can't say he's going to be better than Javon Hargrave on day one. I don't know if it is better than it was last year, roster-wise.
Maybe on paper, not. I just think the rotation is strong enough where they're going to be able to manage that whole situation in the middle. And it seems to me, John, they're going to play a lot of dime, because I worry about the coverage. And I think that in lieu of the linebackers, they're going to just, fill up the secondary a little more to compensate for that. And that's, they're thinking defensively, philosophy wise, because three linebackers is a small number of linebackers to have on your roster.
Yeah. Mike, you miss John and I were talking about trying to replace Jordan Davis if he got hurt, and they don't have a true middle guy in a five-man line. He suggested maybe Marlon Tuipulotu could jump in there and do it. I surely give Marlon a chance. I don't know if he's going to be good enough or if he fits that bill, but I got a bigger concern. And I know this is negative, which I try not to do here because they'll kill me on the stream, but you got to give all possibilities, worst case scenarios. What the hell happens if A.J. Brown goes down? Grant Calcaterra moving out to play wide receiver for the Philadelphia? We just take it for granted that Smith and Brown are going to be there every single play. Yeah, but then again, a high ankle sprain happens and a guy's out for a month. What the hell do they do if A.J. Brown goes down?
Yeah, you said that. My dog even heard that.
Yeah.
He's not happy with me. What else is new? I'm ticking even the canines off.
No, listen, that's a major concern, obviously, because we're counting on those two guys to be, the foundation of what they're trying to do. So I guess you could say that about any team. But you're right. Who do they have really? They have a couple guys in the practice squad that aren't ready to play NFL football at that position, and I guess Quez Watkins and Zacchaeus. Yeah, we'll see. If they lose a major player like that, they could be in trouble. There's no question about it. But let's look at this preseason and what we've been quibbling about. Like, we're trying to make up stuff here.
Yeah, you got to quibble about something. It's a good team.
Okay, that's how I get scared. What about the one position here, and who they fill in their practice squad? I mean, it's a far cry from what we used to talk about. With the Eagles, and now I guess they have to find a punter. So let me throw some support out for a Penn State homie.
Yeah, play.
Who-
Yeah.
who's
Gilligan.
probably got the best leg of all those guys, right? Blake Gilligan, can he survive, John and Jody?
Yeah, why not? I mean, they tried out 3 punters. Blake was one of them yesterday. I know everybody's hyper focused on replacing Aaron Sipas. Pat O'Donnell is probably, he's a veteran guy. He's done it probably the most. And Colby Wadman, who I don't know, but those are the 3 punters. And obviously everybody wants the punt god. I hear that constantly. I've heard no thoughts of the Eagles bringing him in, right or wrong. Can they do better than Aaron Sipas? Yes, but I will say this, talk about nitpicking. I've been nitpicking. So we're going to get down in the weeds here, Mike. Special teams.
I mean. We're
Special teams.
Yes.
Nobody gives a crap about Michael Clay in that building. I feel bad for Michael Clay. Everybody wants to. You're talking about Penn State. Zach McPherson played there before Texas Tech. He was one of their best special teams players. He's lost for the season. Sean Bradley, Temple guy, one of their best special teams players, lost for the season. Then they cut Kayvon Wallace. They cut the 2 rookies who look like good special teams players. Mekhi Gardner, Ben Van Sumeren. They're both back on the practice squad. Maybe they can elevate him, do things that way. But guess what? If you don't sign a punter, you got to elevate a punter. If you don't sign a punt returner, you got to elevate a punt returner. Britton Covey. What the hell's going on with special teams?
Yeah, I guess
Let's
we never put
pick
enough
some
emphasis.
nits, Mike.
We never put enough emphasis on that special team factor, and you're right. You're right about that. Who returns punts right now?
I assume
who's
Covey,
your,
to be honest.
who's your guy? Covey?
Yeah.
They'll elevate him?
Elevate him. But they're going to have to. Alameda can do it. I guess you can get through it for a couple games with Alameda Zacchaeus. Maybe Justin Evans. He did it in the preseason. They can do it. They obviously have to elevate a punter if they don't sign one. You need a punter. As good as the offense is, they need a punter. So they've kind of hamstrung themselves. They have some time until next Tuesday or Wednesday. But yeah, special teams, it was an issue last year. They weren't good enough. And they've lost their best players, and they haven't replaced them.
All right. So all these things that we're talking about, could that be a downfall to the point where they're not the best team in the NFC?
No, but it could lose them the Super Bowl, as it already did. I would argue the play that tilted the game, people talk about the defense, the play that tilted the game was the Tony punt return. That tilted the game to Kansas City. So to me, that was the biggest play in the game, special teams.
So you're already at the Super Bowl level. What could prevent them?
Well, I want to talk to you about that as well.
I take it a little lighter than that. I just right now, I think getting the number 1 seed is extremely important. I haven't even gotten to that next level yet. I'm trying to figure out who could get past them to win that position.
Yeah, I'm not sure there is a team in the NFC. If it is, it's San Francisco, and then I think there's a drop off between the top 2 teams and everybody else. All right, Mike, I gotta get a confidence read on you because we bat this around often here on Birds 365. Is the defensive defections the biggest question mark coming into the year, or is 2 new coordinators? It's never happened before. A team goes to the Super Bowl, loses both of their coordinators. By the way, good luck to both Jonathan Gannon and to Shane Steichen. Their teams are going to be bad. I mean, just flat out bad. Between the 2, the Eagles the Eagles could double up the number of wins that Gannon and
they should. They not only could, they should. They should double up.
And so we sit back and say, see what you guys left. Look at you now.
Exactly.
Like the scene from Scarface. Look at you now.
All right. We've already talked about Desai and what he may not do. A little bit more flexibility. Nice.
Yeah, it's a really good. I think it's Desai more than it is Brian Johnson. I have more confidence in what they do offensively, and when you get to the defense, there are a lot of things that have to really come through for them. And one is that defensive tackle rotation with the rookie being thrown in there, not getting hurt. One is the linebacker concept. the safety a little bit. So Desai, I think, is a lot. His job is going to be a lot more important than Brian Johnson at this
Here's
point.
my only reservation with that. And I know Johnny agrees with me. We're on the same page on this one. Shane Steichen was a very good play caller. There's a lot of interpretation to it. There's pushing the right buttons at the right time. It's even tough to put a finger on and be able to describe other than check the results. Oh, by the way, he was very good at it because the results say he was very good at it. Brian Johnson's got this long-standing relationship with Jalen Hurts. He's well thought of around the league. He's never called an NFL game before as a play caller. So that's a big unknown for me. And he's being comped to a guy who was outstanding at his job last year. You got any worries that Brian Johnson just won't be as good a play caller as Shane Steichen?
A little bit, but they're so diverse on offense that I don't know that it's going to be that difficult for him. I look at it, I love the running back rotation, and they'll be able to match that up with whoever, whatever they need from that particular guy. The tight end's great. The two receivers are great. Their offensive line is great. So I don't know. To me, if you've got all that material, it's a little easier for you to play call to be successful because those guys, talent-wise, are going to deliver for you no matter what you play. I call. So I'm not. Maybe I should be a little more worried about it. I'm just not. I'm more worried about how they line up defensively, and now John's got me worried about special teams.
Well, now you brought up expectations. Now, see, I'm with you. I'm not skipping steps to the Super Bowl. I think making the Super Bowl last year was an accomplishment. I just talked about this last night with Tone, our producer. Like I hear so many fans they're like, they think it was egregious that they lost the Super Bowl. Like that's a common occurrence, Mike, that's not even worthy of any kind of self. Now I get the emotion of losing the game. Jody and we agree on Shane Steichen play calling. One thing we disagree on, I think the best team lost the Super Bowl. Jody's a bottom line guy.
Yep.
Kansas City won the game. They won the game. I mean, you got to give them the tip of the cap. But I think the best team lost. That's an accomplishment. That is the best team last year I've ever covered. I've been covering this league for too long. I'm too old. I covered the 98 Vikings, covered the 2017 Eagles Super Bowl team. This team was better, last year's team. They lost the big game. I get it, the emotion, but that was an accomplishment. To assume that that's going to happen again, boy, it just doesn't work that way. The expectations to me are out of whack.
I agree more with Jody on this because they got beat by the best playmaker in the league. Who made plays. And so I go, okay, well, I got to defer to that. It's like when they lost to the Patriots years ago. I said, you know what? The Patriots were a little more experienced to win that game. So I don't get upset with it. I think this maybe even energizes the Eagles more to win it. They lost, and it was a matter of fact that they lost to the playmaker who beat them. And I don't buy – I know the history says the opposite, that when you get there, you usually don't get back. But I think there's a lot of incentive to get back for this team. And I think they're directed very well towards that. And they've got a leader who's a quarterback who just doesn't allow himself any breath at all to fail. So I like the position they're in. And to me, it all comes down, if you get home field advantage throughout the playoffs, you get there. And the team you now play is going to be a different team than what team you played last year. And you maybe should be better than that team that you play. So I have nothing but optimism about this year. I'm not worried about the slide down. And I know that there are these components you have to look at and say, well, the coordinators are different. This is different. They're depending on some inexperienced players and some experienced defensive players left. I get all that, but I just think they're good. And I think they're directed.
I do, yeah. And by the way, I agree with you. They lost to the best playmaker in football. But on one day in February, the best playmaker in football was the second best quarterback on the field. I truly believe Jalen Hurts played a better game. Now, you had the unforced error which is very uncharacteristic and very unlucky. But the best player on the field was Jalen Hurts. He was the
You're
best
probably
player on the
right,
field.
but I look at it like, hey, you know what? They lost to Mahomes. A lot of people have. So I get destroyed when they lose to a team that I believe they should beat. And I went into that game thinking I'm not so sure they can beat this team, even as good as they are, because of this dude. And I don't know, but this year's a different year for me. I think that I'm very optimistic about this year's team.
And the whole thing about the unforced error, there's so many different ways to look at it. You don't drop the football. Hey, come on, it's an unforced error. That's a bad play. Anyway, it was unlucky.
Yeah.
Except it wasn't. He dropped the football. You can't drop the football in that spot.
So does that still make him the best player on the field there, Joe?
Well, I asked you guys. I think he was. I think he was the best player on the field. It's
except for that.
That wasn't not except for that. That's involved. I mean, that's part of that's part of what you decide. He made it a bad play. Nobody goes through a football game. That's not one of Patrick Mahomes' best games. He performed in some big high leverage spots. But if you look at the numbers, if I told you the numbers for Patrick Mahomes before the game, you guys would have both said, yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. So, I mean, he's performed at a much higher level. And like I said, no questions asked, best player in football, best playmaker in football. But man, Jalen Hurts was better than him on that particular day. Now, I still think Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback overall. But yeah, I don't know how you can watch that game and say he wasn't the best player on the field, but that's just my opinion.
All right. So, and with his mindset, he's going to be even better. So there should be less worries. All right.
I'm not worried because, I don't, at the end of the day, win, lose, or draw, I still got to cover the game. My job doesn't change, but from the standpoint, I'm just talking of the expectations. Look, and forget about Jalen Hurts, runner-up MVP, playing at that level on that stage. We talk about it all the time with the defense. Number 2 defense, number 1 ranked passing defense. I guarantee you one thing, Mike, they're not getting 70 sacks this year. I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
I'm going to guarantee that.
You're probably right about that. And maybe I'm not accounting for it. There's going to be a little slide down numbers wise. But to me, if they don't if they're not the best team in the NFC, I'd be extremely disappointed. I mean, I don't know what game schedule. They lose a couple of games in that tough 6-game schedule. I would be disappointed because that would probably knock them out of that number 1 seed.
It's gonna be them and the 49ers, and the whole who is the better team at the end of the season. Eagle fans always seem to say except for the unforced error. Well, it happened. Except for the punt return. Well, it happened. That's part of the Philadelphia Eagles is their inability to cover punts and a good punter who can get off a good punt. You can't just wave a magic wand and say, well, we don't want to evaluate that. It happened. It was part of the game, and you got to factor that in. That's why the Chiefs won last year, and that.
I agree with you. So, you're batting heads now with John on that.
Yeah, he continues
this little sparring match.
Well, I mean, I think it's obvious that where we differ. Jody's the bottom line guy. I get it. I mean, the team wins, but you guys covered sports forever, both of you. I mean, the best team doesn't always win. There's upsets every week. Same thing in the biggest game. There are upsets, and the best team doesn't win. To me, it's common sense. It happens all the time. Literally. Where the best example in the NFL, Mike, can anybody sit there and say when the Giants upset the best Bill Belichick Patriots team that the best team won? I mean, come on.
You're right.
Eagles didn't come in undefeated, John. They had the same exact number of losses that the Chiefs had.
No, that's not my point. I'm just trying to say the overall aspect. It's much closer between the Eagles and Chiefs than the Patriots and Giants. That's the biggest outlier I can come up with off the top of my head. The Patriots were so much better than the Giants, but the Giants won the game. And
Right.
credit to
Oh,
them.
it can
They won the
happen.
game. It
It's
happens
just
all the time in sports.
right. But
Uh,
I think they were that close coming in. And then the best thing, Mike, when you go down to Oceans, you go make a bet. After the game, are you allowed to bring up your ticket and go, hey, but the better team actually lost. Can you cash this one for me? Then I look, go, and no, you lost.
No,
The
I'm
final
still trying
score
to
kind of
find that
decides
casino that
whether
would
you get
allow
paid
that.
or
Yeah.
not, right?
but
Yeah, I
that's
want to
not my
find that
point.
window
I'm not
that allows
gambling.
that.
I'm just evaluating a football game. I'm not gambling. I'm not, I'm saying the Eagles were the best team in football. I thought that pretty much all season. They were the deepest, most Mike heard me say it, you've heard me say it. They were the deepest, most well-rounded team in football.
Yeah, they
They didn't
wowed
win in
us.
the end.
They
didn't
wow
win.
every post game show. They wowed us every game. It's like, what, really?
Yeah.
I agree with that. But going into that game, I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't think that they were positively the better football team in that game because of the pedigree of that other team, the experience level, because the one guy who just is crazy.
Well, you also got the great coach as well. I'm not criticizing Kansas City. That's the best coach quarterback combination of this era, certainly. So anybody who loses to Kansas City, it's not exactly a wild upset. I think it's a slight upset that the Eagles lost that game. That's all.
Here's the way I looked at it coming in. Both teams were 14-3. The Eagles had a much easier path to the Super Bowl. The NFC wasn't all that good, and the Chiefs had to get through the AFC to get there, and it was evidenced by they needed their field goal kicker to win games for them 2 straight weeks in the postseason, and the Eagles had 2 laughers. That's pretty much the same for me. Get to the final game, may the best team win. The best team wins, they're the best team, and that's the way I looked at the Chiefs last year.
No, there's no nuance with that. I'm a nuance guy.
Yeah, some things are.
I'm more of a bottom line guy too, Jody. So.
Yeah, some things are more cut and dry than that. All right, Mike. You did say earlier you like the Eagles running back situation.
Yes.
And we assume that they're going to share the load. Don't know. We'll find out over time. I'm going to flip the script on you. Last year, the Eagles had 4 running backs on the roster. And every week, John would be handed the inactive list. And it was the book of Sherman. And who am I missing again? Job's book of Sherman.
The sermon from the book of Job.
Right. They were inactive every single way. Trey Sherman played 2 games or 1? I know he got a carry in 1.
He got the big Jacksonville 2 carries in the big Jacksonville game.
Yeah, he might have been active twice during the year, but otherwise he was inactive. They lose Miles Sanders and they replace him with both Rashad Penny and Swift. That's 4. Last year they dressed 3 every single week. That means somebody's going to sit each week. Is that going to be rotating as well? If we believe who's going to get the ball, who's going to get the carries, who's going to get the activity, how do they decide? If they're only going to play 3, somebody's got to sit. Trey Sermon was the guy all last year. Who's going to be the guy this year? How are they going to work that?
Maybe it'll be different this year. Maybe they won't sit that. That maybe leaves you a little short on special teams.
So another guy who can't play special teams on the active roster.
Well,
how's that going to work?
It's a really good point on what they're going to do there. I didn't even think about them not dressing 4 because I think they need to.
Think they're going to dress all 4?
Almost. Huh? I think they need to get something out of each one of those guys at particular parts of the game. I think that might be their strategy, but that does leave them short in another area. So that's probably a concern. But those guys are so diverse. I can see them being utilized in a lot of situations during a game. So I don't know what they're going to do. That's a good point, whether they'll dress 3 or 4.
At Mike Miss 25, make sure you follow Mike Missinelli on Twitter or X, as we call it now, MikeMiss.com. And the podcast, the Mike Missinelli podcast. Make sure you listen
Mike Miss
to that.
2.5, by the way, was in honor of Ben Simmons when he wore 2.5 here.
Yeah. Well, Ben's coming back, by the way.
Ben is coming back.
He come back Mike.
He'd really like to come back to Philadelphia.
He loves it here. And why shouldn't he? Let's be honest. I'd love to see him. You should bring Carson Wentz back as well.
I've never seen a guy like this ever in my life.
I'm with you with Ben Simmons. By the way, Nick Nurse was at Eagles practice yesterday. Nick Nurse is, he's in for a hell of a season. That poor guy. He doesn't know what he signed up for. But it's Spurs 365. So we'll bring it back to the Eagles. You mentioned the running backs. I'm not a big fan of committees. I got to be honest with you, Mike. I want to, whatever you want to call it. You don't have to call it bell cow, lead back. I want Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders was the lead back. When I hear what you're saying about the traits, but that puts more pressure on Brian Johnson. We were talking about Brian before, because then you got to start thinking about trend busting. In other words, all right, if Penny's the guy between the 20s running the football, the defense knows Penny's the guy between the 20s running the football. If Gainwell's the hurry up back, they know Gainwell's the hurry up back. If Swift's the guy who's going to get the bubble screens, they know Swift's the guy who's going to get the bubble screen. And all of a sudden, you gotta be cognizant of that, and you got to be really disciplined to not tip what you're doing. And I think that makes things harder. Again, it's nitpicking, but I'm not a big fan of the committee.
I've changed on that, John. I think the way the league is going, I used to think like you, and one guy had to be the guy. But I think they can scheme this. I mean, their offensive line is so good that they can scheme. We do this. We're still going to do it better than you, and we're going to get some juice out of it. So, that's why I kind of look at this situation. I think the league has evolved to the point you keep guys fresh, and you put them in their best positions, and you convert that play because you're so good offensively and your offensive line is so good. So,
all right, we've discussed the Eagles enough. I got a Missinelli question before we let you run.
Ben Simmons.
Not Ben Simmons. Has nothing to do with.
Yeah, I could talk for an hour on that dude.
Purely to do with Mike Missinelli. General Knowledge Wednesday. What do you miss most about it?
I missed the completely ridiculous guesses of the answers, because that was such value for a show. Like how somebody could be so far off, or not get the easiest questions. That was the delight of that for me. You don't want to make fun of people, but you had to. And when you start making fun of people that way, I think that I was, good at making fun of people. I don't know if that's a good quality or not.
I am going to be 100% honest with you, Mike. When I be in the car, I'd be listening to General Knowledge Wednesday. More than trying to get the answers right, I would try and decipher ahead of time, will the guy get the answer himself, whoever's on the line, by judging the quality of conversation up to that point. Like,
you can get a feel for that.
This guy's got no friggin' chance, whatever question Mike had. Before you'd ever ask the question, I tried to decipher what I thought. More so than what the question was. I didn't even listen to the question. Just, will this guy get it right or get it wrong? And I got to give you credit because you were very good at handling him and doing that. I missed General Knowledge Wednesday. I needed to know how much you missed it as well.
Yeah, it was fun. I used to love doing it.
Did you make all those questions up yourself? Do you do the research?
Yes, I do. I do all the research for those questions.
Really?
I found various websites that I thought would be perfect for it. So there was always a theme to it, and I would pick those out. And it's funny because I would try to ask an easy question when we needed to get the count up, because we had set an over-under number on how many we would get right during the day. And I go, we're way behind. So let me at least make it like close to the number so we add some drama in here. But and then if it got too crazy, I would ask a question that I knew they had no chance to get. When I wanted to shut it down.
He will not. You try and shut it down on the Eagle post game, so you're going to have a problem because Seth Jonas, the guy's next.
Yeah, that goes on for how long, John? 3.5 hours this year?
Yeah, 14 hours. I think by the time I get up there, it's about 14 hours.
I have a backache after those shows.
And good luck putting the submission in to get your tolls refunded, Mike. That's just not happening,
No, I guess not.
Not going to be getting that easy.
We're not going to get compensated for gas either. That's a half a tank.
No. Yeah, you got a little bit of a ride. Mike, very much looking forward to seeing you all season long after the games. Check out the Mike Missinelli podcast as well. We'll have you on. I know it's a little overkill during the season, but we don't care. We enjoy when you're on the show with us. So be expecting my call in season, Mike.
My pleasure, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jody, John.
Mike
Thanks, Mike.
Missinelli here with us on Birds 365. All right, timeout coming. Mikey Miss, thank you very much for hopping on. Brad Spielberger, thank you very much for hopping on in advance. He's going to join us coming up next in about 20.